Is that helpful to understand that? So a little bit about myself, I've actually overdosed numerous times, okay? And I've overdosed 24 times to the hospital. Now, when I begin talking about this, please do not misunderstand this as some kind of glamorizing drug-a-log. Because as I'm telling you this story, I'm reliving my own PTSD, because I have severe PTSD, okay? So when I talk about this, I'm putting myself out there to you people in a trusting way to say, here's what I went through, right? So 24 times to the hospital on various overdoses, and 12 of those overdoses were opioid or heroin. Of those 12, this magic drug brought me back to life. 12 times. Narcan. Who knows about Narcan by any chance? So back then, when I was doing this, it was about $5 a vial. It's kind of expensive, I guess. I can get a couple of cheeseburgers for that. But the point is, I was on social media recently, and there was a guy who was like a city councilman that was saying, you know what, we're spending too much money on using Narcan on people, and we should stop doing that because we're giving them the wrong message. What's the wrong message? If I had diabetes and went into insulin shock, would the message be to be a better diabetic? I see you reached your allotment of insulin and ambulance trips, and so we're going to cut you off. So at what point do people become disposable? I mean, I don't want to be viewed as a disposable person, but I was kind of treated like one, going to the hospital on an overdose, especially back then, you weren't treated very nicely. And so one time at Detroit Receiving Hospital, they didn't like the way I was kind of acting. I was kind of still, kind of a little bit hazed out. And the nurse said, honey, if you don't keep your eyes open, I'm going to shoot you full of Narcan and ruin your entire day. And I was like, wow, that's really, really bad. So got in a little bit of an argument with the doctor, and they said, you know what we're going to do for you? We're going to wheel you out in the hallway completely naked with a catheter in you. Just leave you out there for a little while to kind of look at yourself and what you've been doing with your life. Now, I'm a therapist now. Does anyone think that those 4 hours that I was in the hallway Detroit Receiving in front of everybody, was that therapeutic for me?
Absolutely not.
No. And what was my thought process as I was sitting there in 4-point restraints? I can't wait to get out of here to get high. Which is counterintuitive, right? You'd think that the person that's getting treated like this would put those two pieces of the puzzle together and go drugs bad, sobriety good. But you're not putting the parts together that tie into self-esteem and self-confidence and self-loathing that bring a person to that point of despair. And so the problem is that back when I began, using drugs, I had a lot of associates at one point in my life that were large-scale Chaldean cocaine dealers. This is back in a different era. And so one of the problems with hanging out with these guys is that, there was lots of drugs and lots of money floating around. And so heroin was not popular during that era. It was more of a crack era in Detroit. And I'm not sure how violent Detroit is right now, but let me tell you, during the era of best friends and the era of white boy Rick, it was really dangerous down there. And so you probably were not going to be a drug tourist. Now, God bless the hearts of many people that you're going to meet with that use heroin. They're going to maybe tell you that they're street oriented and all this kind of stuff. But let me tell you a little secret. The majority of them, because I work with them as a therapist, they're drug tourists. It's a compliment. So a drug tourist is a person that goes back and forth to buy their drugs to suburbia and to their area of Pontiac or Detroit, right? And in my era, you were not really a drug tourist. You were down in that area. You were part of that area. You were part of that marginalized bunch of people. And the stigma was much stronger back then, right? So you were using needles, you were an IV drug user. And so, I don't know, is a person's life, I'm a pretty good turnaround story, if I can say so. Jeannie, can I say that out loud? Is that bad if I say that?
No.
I did turn my life around, 10 years clean and sober, not a single drug, alcohol, joint, sip of wine or anything. I have my own Serenity Therapy Center. I help a lot of people. I have a car that seems to impress people for some reason. I have put myself out there to help others. And so without this little medication right here, I wouldn't be standing in front of you. But then people view me from that other lens, who I was before versus who I am today. That ties me back into, we are a community, right? Which means that we have common unity. What's the greater good? What are we trying to do here? And so I thought America was a place for second chances. I thought America was a place where we kind of rooted for the underdog. the guy that had a really difficult life, because my childhood wasn't so great. Lots of your drug tourists that you meet today had some pretty good childhoods and saw a doctor and gave them a prescription for some pills and kind of ruined their life, but that wasn't my childhood. I was locked up in Children's Village at age 16. I had 4 felony convictions by the age of 16. And so they were trying to send me to Jackson Prison when I was 16 years of age. And trust me, had I gone to Jackson Prison, I would not be standing in front of you people here today talking about these types of things and being the person that I am. That would have been a complete waste. I know my anger levels back then, it would have been bad for everybody. That being said, though, I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful to have a chance to talk to everybody that's in this room about what I've gone through, okay? And I don't want to apologize for being sober, but abstinence is not using a drug, okay? And that's good. So if a person says I'm abstinent, not going to meetings, but not using drugs, that's great. And so recovery is more complicated. Recovery is an active change in attitudes, ideas, and behaviors. If you were a drunken horse thief and you stopped stealing horses, or stopped drinking, I'll go that direction. If you were a drunken horse thief and you stopped drinking, what would you be? A sober horse thief. That's an improvement. But I'm going for the gold standard. I'm not trying to get a silver or bronze medal. So recovery is an active change in attitudes, ideas, and behaviors. That can't be achieved by being on Suboxone and methadone, because those drugs mask feelings. And I've gone to thousands of meetings. People that are like me, we paid our dues. So I say that with pride. If you want to be like me and be in our gang, you got to pay your dues. You can't be taking some kind of drug to take the edge off, even if it's given to you by a doctor. With that being said, though, even I have clients that are out there that are, involved in prostitution or, armed robberies, and we're like, okay, to get you off the streets, are you willing to go to a methadone clinic, this actually harm reduction model? I don't want you dying on me. So there are times where Suboxone methadone can be used, but it shouldn't be our go-to thing. And the problem is that we have limited funding, right? Insurance companies are very biased. And so even the treatment center is kind of a disservice to people. They give you 7 days in inpatient rehab, and the kid gets out and he uses this, and he goes, Mom, see, rehab doesn't work. But is 7 days enough to get off of heroin? No. So then why do they give you 7 days? Are you being set to fail? Then how do you feel about yourself when you went to rehab for 7 days and they said, well, you should be good to go, just follow your aftercare plan and don't use again? How does it affect your self-confidence and your self-esteem? You follow what I'm saying? So the drug companies don't like the idea of people going to rehab because it cuts, and it's expensive, okay? And a $5 pill or a $3 pill is much, much cheaper. Methadone is about 40 cents a day. So that's the way for them to go. My wealthy clients, who have lots of money, who have their own private airplanes, some of them, they don't go to a methadone clinic. They don't go on Suboxone. They go to Betty Ford Center with a $30,000 cashier's check, and they get the best treatment, the best doctor, the safest and nicest medical detox, and have some of the best outcomes. I'm just saying, right? And so we got to put our dollars, where our hearts are. Now, I'm not trying to get political at all, but does anybody want to know how much money was spent by us, taxpayers in this room, to rebuild Afghanistan? Not to blow it up, not to pay for troops, but to rebuild the country of Afghanistan, their roads, their bridges, and their schools. Got a number for me, anybody? $8 billion. Now, I love people around the world. I love Afghan people as well. But do you think that $8 billion was spent the best way it could have been spent? That's something to think about, right? So when we say we have no money to help people in addiction, don't ever hear that. What we're saying is that that's not really our priority, right? Because you can see where the priority is based on where the money goes, right? And so this is a very important concept. I try to point out that, we have a chance here to turn things around. And this chance is basically kind of limited. And so with that being said, you can't overdose on recovery. The reason why I brought this up is that if you're using Suboxone or methadone, you can overdose and die. I'm going to bring us all the way back around to overdoses, because our focus is going to be on overdoses and how they happen, right? And so the reason why I promote this whole idea of being drug-free, 100% drug-free, even though it's the hardest standard, the most difficult standard, I'm a life coach. Lots of my clients see me for life coaching. I have some clients that see me that would never see me if I called myself a therapist in front of them. They freak out. It's about a lot of these guys that are high-profile CEOs and such, and they don't like that idea. But as a life coach, I can always say to them, here's the deal. If I watch you play football for the entire game, I'm watching every move that you make, every thought process that you have. And notice that after you play that game, that you made 99 out of 100 choices correct. What's my job as a really good life coach? To focus on your one mistake or the area to improve you. We tie that back into helping people, right? People that are using drugs and alcohol right now are not bad people who are trying to make it good. They're sick people who are trying to get well, because addiction is a disease. That's a very important concept. And so I want to talk about,